Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Nordvik. This is episode 5 if I'm not completely mistaken, and today's episode is all about expanding or expansion. I haven't quite figured out what I should call it, but that's definitely the main theme in this episode. We are gonna continue working on what we started in episode 4, which is downtown Nordvik. Now, if you haven't watched any of my previous episodes, then I can give you a quick recap of what this is all about. Nordvik is the name of this city, but it's also the name of this entire region. It is based somewhere in Scandinavia. The reason I say somewhere and not a specific place is because I want to be kind of generic, and I want this to be somewhat reminiscent of different places in the different Scandinavian countries. And I do take most of my inspiration from the Scandinavian peninsula, so that is Norway, Sweden, Finland. Denmark's nice and all, but their architecture and landscape is more similar to German and Dutch. So that's not quite what I'm going for, but it is gonna be quite similar in a lot of places. What I'm starting with is continuing working on the central train station, adding this little train yard. I don't know too much about how trains work and stuff like that, but the main brick building that I placed down earlier in this episode might work as some sort of repair shop for the train cars. Now, train in general around here won't be a big thing. They're not usually that often. You can spot them definitely once you are further up in both Norway, Sweden and Finland, mainly because of the amount of people that live further up north, but also the terrain. It's quite difficult to build some good train lines when all you got is deep and narrow fjords. But we do got a train line, and we're gonna see some action there sooner rather than later, getting some train lines up, just because they're pretty nice. There's a lot of nice train assets on the workshop. What I'm working on now is one of two marinas or piers. No, you can call them marinas that we're gonna build in this episode. Of course, Nordvik is right on the shoreline, or fjord line, if you could call it that. There's a lot of water right next to it. I'm not completely sure if it classifies as a river or a fjord, but taking advantage of the ocean and the sea has been extremely important for the people living in this, especially Norway. Fishing has been one of the main sources of income for a lot of people, and that's not just talking about recently. That's probably thousands of years, really. But this little area is not meant for fishing boats. These are just for personal smaller boats. Building on what we did in the previous episode, we're gonna focus a little bit more on the industrial side of Nordvik, or the city center of Nordvik, or more the urban area of Nordvik is probably a correct way of putting it, as well as the more residential area, because as you can see, when it comes to demand, we need a lot of people, and that is because most of the buildings that we placed down in episode 4 was either commercial buildings or offices. Some residential, but most were of course commercial buildings, and that's what I was going for. So it was time to start working on the more industrial side and working up some industry. And alongside this river here, I decided it could be a nice area to, or it's not really a river, but it's a now empty quay, but it's gonna be water in there, but it is kind of a ugly looking area, so I decided I could just make it a little bit uglier and put some industrial buildings here, because this is very much realistic. You fairly close to downtown in not just Scandinavian cities, but most cities in the world. You have this industrial area with some warehouses and some sort of garages, and I even placed down a fire department here, like general services to fit this area. And there's also a bridge going across, as you can see, and you can't really put any sort of residential or not, actually just commercial buildings as well underneath a bridge like that. It's gotta be some sort of industrial building, because it's gonna be quite loud with traffic, not just going outside of the buildings, but also right above, as well as some train. There's a train line right behind it, so eventually we're not just gonna see just passenger train lines, but probably also some cargo train lines going past here. So it's a very loud area, so the only right thing to do was to place some industry in this area. Also tried to work a little bit with the fences to sort of mark the lot for each and every building, because that really helps out on the immersion, that you could spot these fences and really take a look at how the not only the buildings look, but also the back lots and how it all works. Because when you're playing this game, and you're playing this game with detailing in mind, you're really trying to tell a story without even saying a single word. You're telling a story with every single prop that you place down, every single tree, every single bush, every single building. It all is trying to tell a story, and I think that's quite fascinating, quite interesting to try to figure out. And like, I wouldn't need to specify, like saying now we're building an industrial area. You could clearly see that is what we are doing. So that might be a little bit of a pro tip, if you're playing City Skylines and you're playing it like this, with detailing and realism in mind, that always try to tell a story, not necessarily with signage or anything, but use just props and buildings, and try to figure out how you could best tell your story without even saying anything. I also asked you in the last episode about, or if you had some questions, because I thought I could do a little Q&A section in my videos, and yeah, I got a lot of comments, a lot of questions, so we're gonna have that pretty soon. So just stick around. And you probably already noticed, but I used chapters in my videos, so if you want to look at something in particular, just use the chapters tool that is available in desktop and on mobile. So most of you are either on your PC or your phone, so it should be quite available to you. Now, as I was just mentioning earlier, that I'm gonna place down some residential buildings in this episode. The demand is screaming for residential buildings, so we are gonna fix that issue right now. And these buildings right here, these are absolutely perfect. I think they're called something with Oslo. I think they have Oslo in the name on the Steam Workshop, and they're of course inspired by real life buildings in Oslo, the capital of Norway. If you didn't know this if you didn't know already. Now the buildings in downtown, they are, I did talk a little bit about this previously, but or in the last episode, but they are a mix between somewhat old and very old. Like the oldest buildings are probably, I would guess, up towards 100 years old, maybe a little younger than that. But there are also buildings that might be just 10 years old or 5 years old. And then there are quite a lot of buildings as well that are built in the 70s or 80s. And the buildings right here, they are very much, I would say, built in probably the 60s or 70s. Reason why you could quite easily tell that is because they are, first of all, there's a lot of apartments. They're quite tall, very simple looking. Could almost look like they are from Eastern Europe. And the reason why they look like that because there was quite a huge financial boom in Scandinavia during the 60s and especially the 70s, and a lot of people not just moved to these countries, but there was a huge influx in the population, so they needed a lot of houses and they needed them quite quickly as well. So these buildings aren't necessarily the prettiest to look at, but they were very effective when it comes to what their purpose was, and that was all about getting a lot of apartments for a lot of people, and quite quickly. So now in the 60s and 70s, when these kinds of blocky apartments did show up in the larger cities in Scandinavia, there was, as I mentioned, a large influx of migrants, especially people from Pakistan. There's a lot of people from Pakistan that moved to Scandinavia in these decades, and a lot of them did settle down in these kinds of apartments, and it sort of created a unique culture around these certain types of buildings, and also some sort of stigma towards these buildings as well, because prior to the 70s, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, they were quite homogeneous societies. Very few, if non-immigrants were living in these places. Most were maybe from Eastern Europe, but no one were from Pakistan, for example, or India or Bangladesh. These types of countries. And when something new comes into a more homogeneous society, it in the beginning it usually doesn't quite work, and you could say that these immigrants that were not only just trying to make a better life for them in another part of the world, but also escaping from war. They were, you might call it, just put away in these giant brick buildings, and it sort of, as I said, created this social stigma towards these types of buildings, because they would be very much typical immigrant apartments, if you might call them that. And that's why you see in most major cities in Scandinavia that where there are similar huge brick buildings that are tall, very bland, sometimes also very much not taken care of, you do have a lot of poverty, because I don't think a lot of people do actually know that there is poverty in Scandinavia, because you always hear about here's the top 10 best countries to live in the world, and these sort of countries, they're always quite high on that list, especially Denmark. Sometimes you got countries like Switzerland as well, but it usually is these Nordic countries. And that is why I also went ahead and created this sort of a retail park very much close to these residential buildings that I just worked on, to continue telling a story with placing down buildings, with placing down props without even saying a single word, telling the story that this is quite a poor neighborhood, poor area, and not necessarily a place where you want to live. But if you don't have any other choice, like a lot of immigrants fleeing from war, for example, this is maybe where you'll end up. So that is another example how to tell a story without even saying a single word. Now let's take a look at some questions that I got in the last episode. I will not be able to answer every single one. I think we're gonna sit here for hours if I were to do that, but I'm gonna take out a few, and then I'll try to answer more in the next episodes. But do go ahead and use the comment section, or contact me on Twitter or Discord if you got more of these questions. These are something I'll try to incorporate in every single episode. So I'm gonna do that whilst working on this custom interchange mess that I'm trying to pull off here on the other side of the river. The first question here is, are you going to, actually two questions, are you going to make an airport, and are you going to make a 1K sub special? As of recording, I think I'm 20 subscribers away from that special 1K. I haven't thought about it, to be honest. I haven't thought about it, so if you have any suggestions on what would be cool in a sort of 1K sub special, then do let me know. But yeah, I should really start thinking about it, because hopefully it's gonna happen soon. And also the airport question, then definitely yes. I was thinking maybe not, because there's not a lot of space for it, but I have found space. It's gonna be a very small airport, very small regional airport, but I'm gonna have an episode quite soon. It's not gonna be the next one, I think, but sooner rather than later, entire episode dedicated to public transport. So we're gonna take a closer look at buses, trains, ferries, cruise ships, and of course planes as well, an airport. Got another comment here from Mikael that we also got in the last episode. I think I also mentioned or pulled up a comment that he made, but the questions that he got a little bit further down here, is he's asking about the garbage recycling in the rural areas in Nordvik. What I planned about recycling in this series is that I'm going to build a recycling center in Nordvik, very much central in Nordic, so it's not going to be too far away from maybe where I'm working right now, somewhere a little bit more industrial, but I'm going to have just the one, and then the garbage trucks. I'm gonna somehow try to take care of the entire region from that spot, because you usually have just one big recycling plant, somewhere urban, somewhere central, and then the drivers, those who are working with recycling, they might drive quite far to pick up garbage. And in most areas they pick up several different kinds of garbage, so not just like trash in general, but for example, they might pick up compost, they might pick up just plastic, just cardboard and paper, and also they might pick up just glass and metal. So recycling is actually something that is taken very seriously, and you can't just throw everything in the trash. There's sort of a social stigma against doing that, so recycling is quite important. And of course he's asking harbor, will they have a harbor with a working fishing industry? Definitely. I'm actually working on a harbor right now, or it's more like a ferry. There won't be any sort of fishing in this one, but I will have placed down multiple harbors that have different purposes all around Nordvik. But I did also get a question, not from the last episode, but a previous episode, about a sort of a small, nice looking fishing village. It's not really a fishing village, but a fishing area. I do want to work on that somewhere. So yeah, I think I'm also gonna have an episode dedicated to industry, where I'm working more on, for example, recycling, and also fishing and other types of export, import, cargo, for example. But thank you for a question. I also want to correct myself, thanks to Patrick right here, because I said that in both Norwegian, Swedish and Finnish, or maybe not Finnish, but I said Norwegian and Swedish, the S at the letter S at train stations stands for central train station, but that is actually just Norwegian and Danish. In Sweden, central is written with a C, like in English. So sometimes you do have, for example, Stockholm S, but that stands for southern. Yes, this southern. So that's my bad. Another question right here. When creating this region, I'm gonna think about how the industry and economy going to work, like 2020 does with Marble Mountain. Yeah, that is definitely something I do want to think about when I am creating these types of regions. It's quite difficult right now because I don't really have that many or that a lot of stuff going on in this map, especially outside of Nordvik, the city of Nordvik. I do have 2 villages, but that's pretty much it. And I do sort of help the economy a little bit by exporting some farming resources. But right now I haven't built up enough to sort of like you can see that these different kinds of areas are functioning and working together. And I do remember with Marble Mountain $2 he started looking at just that very late, because he didn't really have anything outside of Montana. He just waited till he had all these areas outside, until he started really looking at how they interact with each other. But definitely once I sort of built up this area, this entire region, this is something I'm gonna look at, and I'm going to work quite a lot off screen between episodes going forward, just placing down buildings really, simple houses, nothing special, just so we can keep going forward, because I could possibly create 10 episodes that I just call expanding or expansion, where I just place down residential buildings, creating suburbs. But yeah, that's not fun at all. I do like to have some sort of specific thing I'm looking at in each and every episode, possibly except this one, because it's a little bit all over the place. But you do also need these types of episodes where you're just expanding a little bit on multiple fronts. The last question, or really the last questions, they're asking about a collection of mods and assets, and also lots, and that has been something that's been asked about for quite a while, and I can possibly share some quite good news that yes, indeed, I am going to make a collection of all of my mods and all of my assets, everything really. It's not going to be out now. I am actually going to create a video quite soon where I sort of announce the upload of these collections. There are actually going to be multiple collections, and the reason I'm taking so long with it is because there are thousands of assets and mods and everything that needs to be placed down one by one in several multiple collections. So it's quite tedious and it takes a long time, but it's gonna be out very soon. I'm gonna make a video about just that, where I sort of announce the release. So yeah, it's just gonna be maybe a few more days, maybe a week, but hopefully not more than a week from now, if you're seeing this as I upload episode 5, which is this one. Now, once again, thank you for everyone who came up with questions in the last episode, and to you who didn't get your question answered, I will try my best to answer them in the next episode. But if you got any more questions, then of course comment down below. I will write my own comment and pin that one, so that I might remind you that I am looking for more of these kinds of questions, because it's very much simpler to answer them now whilst I'm doing the commentary, rather than typing it out in the comments. It's quite simpler to do it right now, and I can also deliver more detailed answers as well, instead of writing multiple paragraphs answering your comments in the comment section itself. So continue to ask, and I'll continue to answer. At least I'll try. But whilst we've been doing the Q&A, what have I been doing on screen? Well, I was starting to work on this custom interchange. The road I was working on It goes from the main road on the other side of the river, going real much going right besides downtown. But this road, it will be going to what will be the main cargo harbor, so where most of the cargo for Nordvik, the city and the entire region, will be coming from, both with ships and also with train traffic as well. So that is why I chose to create a lot larger road, not just a simple road, because it's going to be a lot of traffic, hopefully, on this one, and it's going to be a lot of heavy traffic as well, which only makes it more reasonable that a road of such importance should be quite large. And I've also been working on this harbor area with a ferry stop, as well as some more industrial areas as well. This will be the main ferry stop in Nordvik. It is on the other side of the city, so it might be a little bit difficult to get to, but honestly it was the only place where I could fit a ferry stop of this size. So this ferry stop is gonna be ferry lines going from here and to the other side of the fjord, as well as the large island that is located outside here that we're gonna have a lot of people on. And also built it like that it was quite clear that it was meant for cars to drive, so you would just drive onto the harbor and get in line, whilst if you were not using a car, you would enter the building right next to it and board the oncoming ferry just by a small footbridge going from the ferry building and to the harbor. So now I'm working on the second marina that I was talking about earlier. This one is maybe a lot newer than the other one. It is definitely a lot nicer, whilst the other one was placed right in the middle of a industrial area, and that one might have been just an old industrial harbor that they used before they got a new larger harbor further away from the city. Then this one is very new and was always built to be a marina for personal boats and stuff like that. And I'm also gonna do some very nice apartments next to this one, as well as detailing this piece of land that sort of sticks out with breakwater rocks to sort of make the water a little bit more still where the boats are placed. And this again will tell a story, since stuff like this are very much often man-made. These areas that are meant to protect the marina from larger waves, and it tells a story that this is a lot more modern area, a lot nicer, and it's probably gonna be a little bit more expensive renting boat space in this one, but there's gonna be rich people living in Nordvik as well, and they're gonna live probably not too far away from this area, and probably a lot of people will be living in these apartments that we placed down right next to them. But this area is very much close to quite a large hill that has a very grand view, so I would expect a lot of nice houses to be placed over on that side. But I'm just finishing up detailing this area before I'm actually going to go back to the city center of Nordvik, and I did talk about it in the last episode, if I'm not completely mistaken, but I'm very sure that I said that I needed to work on this this old harbor inspired by the harbor in Bergen in Norway. I wanted to have I wanted to be larger, the area in front of the buildings. I wanted to have more life there as well. So I actually placed down a road so that we do get traffic, not just traffic, but also people walking on this old harbor. And I do also place down these market stalls. That I also place down the main shopping street in Nordvik to get more life and get more excitement around this area, because maybe there's fish here, freshly cooked, but just caught. So you would go down towards the harbor here, and maybe it would cost a little bit extra to buy fish from here, but it would fish and crabs and shrimp, it would be very cheap. Possibly not shrimp. I don't think you would get shrimp. Oh, you would. Believe me, you could get shrimp. But the last thing I'm going to be working on in this episode is this small neighborhood, very much close to the custom interchange that I was previously working on. I wanted to work on this a little bit just to test out the residential buildings that I have, to see how they look, if they actually look Norwegian, how they look together. Are they too big? Are they too small? Very often the size difference between buildings can quite ruin the immersion. So I wanted just to test it out on this small little area. Started out with placing down one single commercial building. It is a grocery store and also a hairdresser. That's on the corner of this road. It's gonna be quite a busy road, and it's also very much very central, very close to the city. So it would make very much sense to have a grocery store in this area. But once I was done detailing, quite simple detailing, I started looking at the buildings that I had. First tried to see if I could fit a elementary school in here, but I decided I should maybe look at that in the next episode instead. So I went ahead and used Find It to filter the buildings that I had, and try to find buildings that sort of looked the same, as well as they were the same size, which is also quite difficult to find, really. Some of these, or actually very much most of these, are either American or they are Canadian, because there's not a lot of residential houses that are based on homes in the Nordics. Really, on the workshop, it's not a lot of them, and there are very few that is from this area. Those very few that are from or inspired by Nordic homes, they are quite old, quite outdated, and very often too small to fit the bill. So I'm trying my best to find the perfect mix. I think I sort of have it nailed down. It's as good as it can get, but the most important thing is that they are all, or almost all of them, are wooden. That was the main thing. I needed to have wooden buildings. There can be a few brick buildings. More modern buildings are concrete, but more normal looking homes that you find in the suburbs are, of course, are wooden, because there's a lot of wood, there's a lot of forest on the Scandinavian peninsula. Now let's take a look at what we have built so far in this episode. I'm gonna go in game and take a look at some shots here. The first thing we're gonna look at is you can actually see the train leaving the Nordvik Central train station, going right through the industrial area by the river. We also have one of the ferries that have just departed from the ferry station, probably heading out to some island just outside of Nordvik. I do also love the clouds in this shot. This is quite nice. And here is another shot of the ferry coming into dock to the into the ferry station. There we go. Now it's ready for the cars to drive on board, but they're really props. They can't drive. Now this is the neighborhood that we built with the convenience store on the corner. Quite a busy area. I like that. There's a lot of people walking around here, and a lot of cyclists as well. I do have the encourage biking policy turned on. Here's a nice shot of the marina that we built. The probably the nicer one of the two marinas, probably the more newer one. And here you can also see the artificial, not really artificial island that we built, but it's kind of like a hand that sticks out, and that has this oil tank on the end. Really just to make sure that the waves don't get too big. And here's a shot of the old harbor. This is in downtown Nordvik. You can see people walking here. You can also see cars driving here. A little bit more life, and it is a lot more fitting this way, rather than the tiny thing that we had before. This is the interchange that we built. Not a lot of cars driving here right now, but as I did mention, it's gonna be a huge, pretty big at least, cargo harbor over on this side of the river. So it's gonna be a lot of traffic. It's gonna be a lot of heavy traffic. So eventually, hopefully, this is gonna be pretty well used. But right now, it's not a lot going on, except a few police cars driving around at ridiculous speeds. Here is another shot of the industrial area by the river. You can also see the train depot in the back, as well as the bus depot and taxi depot. And you can also see the brick apartments, the blocks, also in the top left-hand corner as well. It's quite a busy area. This bridge right here is quite busy. And then there's these taller apartment blocks that we placed down. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can actually see the main shopping strip, the main shopping street in Nordvik. So quite a lot of people walking from this residential area to the city, which is very nice to see. And also see the wonderful background with the clouds as well. And here is the retail park that we also built. Very busy. There's a lot of movement here, not only on the main road that goes through this, but also on the service roads around it and in between all the buildings. There's a lot of heavy traffic as well. A lot of trucks driving around, which is really what I wanted to see. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of this video. It was a little bit all over the place. The title, or really the focus on this episode, was expanding, so we just didn't focus on one single thing. But we are going to do that in the next episode. We're going to focus on something a little bit more specific. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you might want to try to guess And also what you can do is continuing with some questions in the comment section. I got around to answer a couple in this one. I will try to answer the rest that I didn't get a chance to answer properly in this one. But by all means keep them coming and get more questions in. As I mentioned, it can be about everything as long as it is relevant to this series or this channel. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to see the other episodes, then head on over to my channel. And if you want to see how this series develops, then make sure to subscribe as well as turn on the bell notification. That way you will be notified whenever I upload one of these videos as well. As always, if you enjoyed, leave a like and don't be afraid to reach out in the comments. I haven't said this in a while, but also make sure to follow me on Twitter as well as join the Discord. There's quite a lot of people in there right now, and we have a lot of different sort of channels in there dedicated to different stuff. For example, dedicated to Nordvik, this series, but also one just for regular chatting about everything. We also have a channel dedicated to showing off our cities in city skylines that we have been building. So it's a lot of fun over there, so make sure to join in. Everything is listed in the description. But I'm gonna leave you now with the final cinematics, and as always, I would like to thank you all for watching. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.